Well, we really didn't
That
need
always
to.
happens.
Well, it's wedding time and there's stuff to get
Good
to.
evening, everyone. We welcome you to Ek Mulakat with Ms. KAREN Anand in conversation with Ms. Mita Kapur. I would now like to invite Mr. Shekhar Sawant, GM of ITC Rajputana, to deliver the welcome note.
Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to yet another evening of Ek Mulakat. It is said that there is nothing better than going home to family, eating good food and relaxing. One cannot think well, work well and sleep well if one has not dined well, and after a good dinner, one can forgive anybody, even one's own close relations. And most importantly, you don't need a silver fork to eat good food. With the credo, which I can gather comes quite close to what I have just said, I feel that we are privileged to have amongst our midst today Ms. KAREN Anand. Welcome, ma'am. Ms. Anand is a culinary doyen and a food aficionado par excellence, who began her foray 3 decades ago into an uncharted terrain of writing, presenting, influencing eating habits, and generally demystifying the art of great cooking. Ms. Anand, I was at the ITC Windsor in the years 2005 to 2007.
I remember now, yeah.
Yeah, when Ms. Anand used to be a consultant with ITC Hotels, and we used to have her there quite often, and we used to have a ringside view of some of her creations and techniques. Ms. Anand is a successful restaurant consultant, has written extensively on the subject of food and wine for the past 3 decades, with several books such as Good Food and Good Living. Men can cook.
They can, as you know.
Lean cuisine curries, if ever there's such a thing. And to her credit, she has written for magazines such as Verve, Harper's Bazaar, Lonely Planet, Good Housekeeping, the BBC Good Food, and Femina. She was the first food editor for the Elle magazine in India. She has had established columns in the Independent newspaper, Bombay Times, DNA Mint, and the Pune Times. Her current columns include the Sunday Telegraph in Kolkata and the Lux page in the Hindu, Chennai. Ms. Anand, we look forward to an interesting discussion with you this evening. Welcome again.
Are you going to be around, Shekhar?
Yes, I am.
I'll talk to you later.
Thank you, Mr. Sawant. Recently, as a nation, we've been the victims of a dastardly and cowardly attack on our armed forces. We condemn this attack, and before we begin the session, we'd like to request you all to take a minute of silence to pray for the souls of our brave hearts and for the families. Thank you. Today in conversation with Ms. KAREN Anand, we have with us our very own Ms. Mita Kapur, who needs no introduction. Before we begin, I'd like to request you all to please place your phones on silent mode or switch them off. Mita Auntie, over to you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to be on the other side of the fence once in a while. You know, for once I wasn't bothering about sound check, sab time se ho raha hai, nahi ho raha hai. I was just chilling. But with that, I think we've all given a very warm welcome to KAREN. And KAREN is no stranger to our city. She's been coming on and off. And I think most of us out here in the audience is also pretty much, very much into food. I don't think there's anybody here who doesn't really proclaim to be a foodie. So you've got a very engaged audience in front of you. So as we all know, food is a very sensory experience and it involves all our five senses. And here's one lady who's developed the sixth sense by just converting her passion for food into her life goal, into a success mantra. You all know she wears many hats. I mean, Shekhar has just introduced her various strengths. And I'm going to turn to you straight away, Karen. You've been coming on and off, and not enough, to our city.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you can never get enough of Jaipur. What is it that really appeals to you? Whatever little you've observed, is it the chaos? Is it the colors? Is it obviously some part of the food?
No, it's definitely the food as well. You rightly say I don't come often enough. It's actually shocking because there's a direct flight now from Pune, which is where I live, and so I should come more often. But no, I think there is nothing quite like the matar here in winter. There is nothing quite like the light. You know, French painters talk about the light in the south of France. Is that as a lay person coming to this city, your specialities are not available in a lot of places, or in very few places. I would like to go and have either vegetarian Rajasthani food or your famous lal mas or jungli mas in places which give me an interesting experience, which I think is something we should talk about in food. Food is not just about eating anymore, we all know that. And more so now, younger people want experience. That's not to say you can give rubbish food, but I think an experience of sitting in a haveli or sitting in outdoors in a simple surrounding and having great food is something that I really feel is missing in the city, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's been a sort of a gripe for all of us, that a lot of calls come, and if they ask me where do we get the best dal bati or the best gatte ki sabzi or so on and so forth. So my answer to them, frankly speaking, I'm sitting in a hotel, and I'm sure Shekhar is going to hate me for saying this, but it's best to go to people's homes to get authentic food, which is true of most cities, but especially Jaipur, because we do have absolutely rich, untapped reservoirs of culinary traditions.
Sure.
And we have ancient manuscripts and recipe books which just need to be kind of, gone through.
So I think the hospitality people in the audience, maybe it's time. Maybe it wasn't time 2 years ago or 3 years ago, but I think now with the influx of tourists, both from abroad and from India, and all the destination weddings and everything else, maybe it's time to do something a little bit quirky now.
That's high time, believe me. I want to take you back to your childhood. What were you like as a child, and when did this whole love for food kind of journey begin? Because this has to be very deep-rooted.
I think I hid it very well for a long time. It may have been deep-rooted, but it didn't really come out. I was a bit of a Jewish princess. You know the Jewish princess joke. What does a Jewish princess do when she's hungry? She makes a reservation, absolutely, whoever said that. So, not that I made reservations, I was too young to do that, but I certainly, would ask someone else to cook. My mother was not a great cook. She laid a fabulous table. But, we grew up in the UK, and it wasn't easy when my mother came from a household where she had cooks, all of a sudden to come to the UK where you didn't have cooks. So it couldn't have been very easy for her. But she entertained, and she did that quite well. And the joke in the family was always that, she had shares in Marks and Spencer's and Selfridges, because that's where she bought all her food from. And then she would lay this splendid table. So it didn't come from family. A lot of people say, oh, my grandmother but it didn't come from family as far as I was concerned. I believe my grandmothers, with whom I didn't grow up, unfortunately, were great cooks, but I didn't really know them very well. I think, honestly, for me, it was always there, but the actual cooking thing, I think the first book I ever had was Madhu Jaffrey's Taste of India when I was at uni. And because I was Indian, for the sake of argument, I was brown-skinned, and and I was Indian, but I grew up in the UK from the age of 6. So, I was white, what they call a coconut nowadays, brown on the outside, for lots of reasons. And so everyone expected me to know Indian food. And in fact, I didn't know that much about Indian food. So I told Madhu Jaffrey that years later when I met her, and she was quite delighted. And I went through her book, her first little penguin book, if anyone has it, which was a delight, and it worked very well in the UK. And so I, concocted these things that everyone thought was some secret recipe from my family, which of course was a complete lie. It was from Madhu Jaffrey, page 97 or whatever it was. And then I went to Paris, and for me, Paris changed my life. So it changed my life in lots of ways, but especially in food. And therefore, when I came back to India, I did European food, not because I thought it was better, but it's because that's what I knew. And that's what impressed me when I was 18 years old. And I lived with a family in Paris who were great connoisseurs of food. And they taught me about sourcing and about, at what age the cheese should be eaten and what age something else should be done, where the source of the lamb was from. And that's when I learned all of it. Now everyone's talking about sourcing and provenance, but that's what I learned in 1978. And I think I brought that to my world. So that's the influence that really I think if I look back, that's what played an important part in my life.
So what came first in your life, being a chef or being a food critic, or?
I think writing has always been very important to me, and I still continue to write, although it's not financially. A lot of young girls come to me, should we be writers? Should we do? It's unfortunately not lucrative enough, I think, in India. So, since it's not, a lot of people don't do it because they can't make a living out of it, right? So, I do it because I love it, but there has to be something else you do that drives you either for money or for a career or for whatever reason. But I am and I was a writer first.
I'm very glad to hear that. Reaffirms my faith in writing again. But somewhere along the line, the businesswoman in you kind of stepped forward.
Everyone says this, but I think I'm a terrible businesswoman. I've just had good advice.
Okay, so maybe, yes, you had a good team. What I mean to say is to become a food entrepreneur of sorts.
You
were among the first in the field, really, if you go back in time.
I just bullied my way through, I think. And people were very kind, and I've made mistakes. It's not that it's all been, uphill. I've made terrible mistakes and terrible misjudgments on people, and trusted people as well who, they don't report that in the press, so luckily. So I have trusted people who have given me either wrong advice or, partnered with me when I shouldn't have taken them on as partners. But I've bounced back, luckily. So it's a success story in the end, but I've had my fair shares of knocks as well.
I think that's when what we learn from our failures is when we get up and walk again, right? So that's the way to do it.
Well, if you don't, it's very sad. There are lots of people who can't do it. So I think the fact that I have great family support. My husband isn't here, but he's my rock, and he's a huge support. He's a very good person, usually, except this once when we got completely screwed, if you pardon my French, but with a partner that really took us for a ride. But generally, he's a much better judge of person and character than I am. I tend to tend to kind of go with the wind and listen to what people say. But I've had great support.
Well, that's really, really important for all of us when we're
It's important for a woman, I think, because, as a woman, what is important for us is also our family, let's face it. It's not just a career, it's not just... families are important, children are important, your in-laws are important. It's part of what we are in India. And we can't alienate all of that, and we can't forget all of that.
No, it's about we always balance multiple roles, and you still forge ahead, which is what we are all meant to be doing in any case. I want to take you back to, you are an intense traveler.
Yes.
So when you kind of try and open your Google Maps and you say, okay, let me pin a location, which region of the world, which country fascinates you the most? Where would you take? Okay, but where would you take a culinary tour to? If we are in the month of February, where would you choose to go?
Well, I have started actually. I don't know whether you know, Mita. I've started this thing called Culinary Journeys.
Yeah.
It's something that I've wanted to do for many, many years, and I finally had the time to do it. So I take people on journeys. It's not all about food, but every day we have a food experience. And so the countries that I've done so far is I've done Italy and I've done France, for the simple reason that that's where I go quite often because I have friends there or whatever. And so I have experiences that I think are worth sharing with other people. That's not to say there aren't great experiences in India, but I haven't found groups yet. Maybe I'll find groups from abroad who want to come here. But it really depends. These things need a lot of planning. And one, it needs some great experiences. It also needs a great organizational capacity. You know, at one point, I do this with a friend of mine in Calcutta. And at one point, you know, we were on the phone at 6:30 because we both get up early. And my husband was like, who are you talking to at 6:30 in the morning? Because we feel we can talk about, you know, the plan or whatever we're doing or which hotel has given us what quote, and we can do all of that at 6:30 in the morning. So aside the fun, it also requires a lot of organization. So France and Italy I've done. I took a trip to Uzbekistan, which we went past food a little bit because it was vegetarian, so I didn't concentrate on food. I concentrated more on textiles and culture and archaeology and that kind of thing. But it's basically bespoke tours for small groups of people.
But that's always fun because you'll end up discovering and learning so much yourself.
Yeah, and people think things are by chance. They're not. They're all very well planned, actually. They just look like they're by chance, you know.
That's the beauty, right? I'm going to get you back to Indian cuisine because our cuisine is something that's based on thousands of years of civilization that backs it. And for us, all our ingredients, whichever region you take in India, they're there just not to add flavor, texture, aroma, but they're also there to perform a function. There is a science to it.
Yes.
Do you think enough is being done by the collective conscience of this nation to archive, document, save, preserve, and also the challenge that we are such a diverse nation? So how do we kind of sum up the plurality completely?
Well, firstly, I think as a writer, not enough has been written down. It obviously has been in vernacular languages and, you know, but it's not really been translated and got out there. So apart from poor Madhu Jaffrey, most of the cookery books just repeat the same thing. The same dal makhani, the same tandoori chicken, the same. They're just giving people recipes of what they've had in restaurants. And unfortunately, or fortunately, you know, it's the great Punjabi diaspora that's got out there and done their tandoori chicken and done their dals, and they've got those restaurants everywhere, or the Bangladeshis in the UK. So I don't think what we see out, or even in India, is really a reflection. You know, it's not even touching the tip of the iceberg of what we can produce. Now, the point is, anyone here, I think I've met some people in the hospitality industry this afternoon. It's a tough business out there. It's a tough business to run a restaurant, you know. And so people sometimes want to be sure, and they'd rather get, you know, to do something which is more safe than something which is not tried and tested, because it's a huge investment. So I understand where they're coming from. I definitely think people should support it who can afford to support it, whether it's the government or foundations or whatever. If you look at Chinese cuisines, you know, whether it's all the regional cuisines everything has been written down now. And whether it's a communist regime or not, for whoever's done it has translated it into English. I think the problem is we have such a wealth and nothing has been written down compared to what we have.
That is true. But if I were to take you to a particular state or region in India, what really ticks for you? Or do you have a favorite, so to say? I know I'm putting you in a corner, but we'd really like to know.
You know, because I think I go there often, and because I'm more a seafood eater, I think West Bengal really has an amazing variety of food, both vegetarian and non-vegetarian. I'm sure Jaipur does too. I'm sure Rajasthan does, but I don't know it.
Guys, we've got to change this. We can't lose out to Calcutta for anything. I'm sorry, this kind of doesn't work for us. No, you come back next time and we'll show you food.
I will.
Not just in Jaipur, across Rajasthan, and you will not
And I
take.
look forward to, that's what I was hinting at, right? So
Yeah.
she's bit
No, I think
the bait.
absolutely. I mean, there's too much pride involved here, and faith as well. You mentioned the restaurant culture. You mentioned how tough it is to be in this industry. Yet we've seen this burgeoning of the restaurant industry. We've seen a lot of experimenting happening, especially in urban India. I mean, you look at cities like Bangalore or Hyderabad or even Bombay for that matter, Delhi. There is this attempt, a very brave attempt. But what is your take on it?
There is an attempt. I was just I'm on a couple of juries for restaurant awards, and we were at Bombay Canteen, which has won the Condé Nast Award, and I think the chef is winning another award, which I can't talk about, which I just voted for. And so he's a young guy who's doing lots of things with Indian ingredients, and I think you have to make the restaurant a bit sexy. If it's just sitting there and eating, nobody's interested. However good your food is, you have to make it a bit swinging. The bar has to be good, and that's the success of Bombay Canteen.
Yeah, Floyd has really played around with a lot of.
It's not just Floyd. It's it's the partners who are there on an everyday basis,
Yashin
and the chef.
Yeah.
Thomas is great, and they've created this fab vibe. I did it with a restaurant in London, which I was a consultant to, called Dishum. So we've done kind of Bombay street food, but it's really a kind of precursor of Bombay Canteen in a way, but it's young and it's trendy and it's got kind of Irani furniture and it's got this Irani cafe vibe. It's not too expensive. It's we give people chai when they queue up so that they'll stay, and it's also a bit welcoming. So I think the whole idea of going out to a restaurant has kind of changed now.
It is, as you said, it's more about the experience. But coming back to you, what is your addiction? We all have our addictions. We all have one favorite thing.
Shopping in Jaipur.
I'm talking about
Terrible
food.
addiction.
Food. What is it? What is your go-to dish?
Oh, I don't. I'm just trying to think. When I'm at home, I just like very, very, people don't believe me. I like really simple dal chawal when I'm at home, because, or I have a soup, I have a vegetable soup, or a khichdi, right? So, there's nothing really. I love salads and all of that. My go-to is probably that, or dark chocolate.
From dal chawal to dark chocolate. I think we'll all fit into that bracket somewhere. Yeah, that's right. And
some people are bread addicts. My husband is a bread addict. So, his go-to is good bread and butter.
I know some people sitting here. It's a constant fight. And one thing that you can't ever get yourself to eat. There must be something.
Yeah, those creepy crawly things. People say, what difference? But I went to China and there were cockroaches and locusts, and whether, listen, I'm non-vegetarian, but I draw the line at that as well. And I went, and, really, do you need to eat that? Really?
Yeah, that's
really no.
Or monkey's brains or something like that. They do that as well.
Well, brain I've tried. Brain is okay. You try it, and it's not that I eat every day, but there's things that wander around, really. And then I was in Australia now, and there are a lot of these top 50 chefs using red ants, black ants in Michelin star food, and I'm like, why? There's a red ant on the cake, and they said, oh, there's this whole thing now nowadays about protein, and we shouldn't overtax the world
The
about
regular
protein. And there was this fabulous looking chef. Unfortunately, he was so sweet and so good looking, but he served ants, and it was in Melbourne, and a restaurant called Attica, which is like number 20 in the world now. It takes people months to get a reservation, and they got me a reservation. It was for 6:30 on a Tuesday or something with great difficulty. And I sat, and his name is Ben Shorey, he's lovely. And then I said, why ants? And he gave me this whole intellectual spiel, And I said, really? Don't eat that kind of protein. I mean, really. But they had red ants and black ants. On something. I avoided that.
That's gross.
I think it's gross, but people are eating them. Chinese have been eating them for many years.
And they come up with all those medicinal properties
That's
as
another
well.
thing. Yeah, they use it also in their medicine.
Medicines, yeah, that's true. The first thing that you ever cooked?
That's a tough one. I don't know. Do you know I made tandoori chicken at the age of 14? I think it was a disaster. But I tried out of a packet, which said add two tablespoons of dahi or something and mix the masala and put it on the chicken. No, I don't think it was a disaster. People ate it. But that was at maybe 15 or 16. I didn't cook before that.
And have you also tried feeding your husband something that's burnt and he's eaten it out of sheer love?
Yes.
Good. That's good. I just wanted to reconfirm on that one.
He's very polite. So he will say, oh, that's got a nice texture. Well, he knows he'll get a walloping if he, Because he doesn't cook at all. The big joke in the family is that he doesn't know the way to the fridge. It's really, it's quite pathetic. Now it's reached a point that, of course, he doesn't even attempt because we're beyond that mountain, But he makes tea and coffee.
But making a good
toast.
cup of tea is
he
quite...
does make a good cup of tea and toast. And he's very good at, if we're abroad and we're staying in an Airbnb or something, he washes up, which is a treasure to me because I hate washing up. I think when you go abroad and you have to do your own washing up.
So there is some strength out there, even if he...
he washes
absolutely.
up, he does all of that, yeah.
No, but that's the toughest part. So if that's taken care of, absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
People say to me, oh, can you bear? Some of these housewives, I'm sorry, I'm being very rude, but say, I cannot bear to see a dirty kitchen. I said, I can. I go into the other room and I close the door. Very simple. I don't have to see it either. Because I ain't gonna, to clean up after I've been slaving for several hours. So I close the door and I go to bed and somebody else cleans it up. That's my deal, right? So if there isn't help around to do it, he does it. I think that's okay, no?
Yeah,
Is a deal?
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a great deal to have because it's easier to cook than to clean up.
Well, no, not lots of people wouldn't agree that it's easier to cook, but it is easier for me to cook than it is to clean up. Clean up and ironing. Ironing is also... hate ironing. I'll do other things.
I think a lot of people are kind of mentally nodding their heads inside their own, because I'm sure most husbands go through this, and there are a few men out here who are also saying, we're also made to go. This is our story.
Listen, I have two sons, and they both cook quite well, and they both cook for their partners. And in fact, for Valentine's Day recently, my younger son just got married, and he said he forgot it was Valentine's Day. So I also forgot. Someone reminded him in the office at about lunchtime. And he's like, oh God, what can I do now? So they're giving him strategy, right? So, you can't say you've forgotten. Just say that you're surprising her in the evening. And so this whole strategy was worked out. And then we all said to him, are you going to get her a gift? He said, no, she's not into presents. But what would really give her pleasure is if I cooked for her. So I said, great, So he said, I will do steak and I will do this. And she loves prawns and blah, blah, blah. And he went to this Nature's Basket and did this whole story. And I gave him a bottle of sparkling. And maybe she'd like white. So he went to a lot of trouble and actually gave her what she wanted, which was a lovely dinner, as opposed to a silly present that people would probably get wrong,
Yeah, well, that's the thing about food, right? It always creates memories for us to go back to.
And interestingly enough, she was delighted. She wanted a nice dinner. She said, I'd much rather that than a gift. There you are. Today's woman.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, it's the experience, right? It's those moments that count. Everyone knows a lot about your weakness for truffles and your weakness for a good Prosecco. And so have you kind of delved deeper into this? You foraged around, I'm sure.
Yes.
And that also must have been quite exciting. What all did you discover?
I go truffle hunting now whenever I go to Italy because I love doing it. But I think they cheat for me. I think they plant things here and there for me to find, because I find them in 2 hours, so it's just not possible. But no, I love the whole thing of being in Wellington boots and going into forests and not worrying about whether my hair looks good or not, and putting a hat on. And the two men I hunt with, one I don't know too well, the other one is 87. Wow. And he walks as far as I do. And he has 2 dogs who go with us, and I've done it now maybe only 4 or 5 times, but it's great. It's great to get the truffle at the end of it. Otherwise the walk is it's just a walk. So, and I like doing it in winter, because it's a winter thing. And the main thing is you don't have to worry about, as I said, what you look like or who's around or,
No, it's and it's also about digging into the earth, the feel of the.
Do that. The dogs do it.
The dogs do it for you.
The dogs do it. They're trained. The challenging thing is to get the dogs away from the truffle, because they like the smell as well. So they want to start eating at it. So you've got these little scratch marks sometimes. So I took a vegetarian group last year. They were very excited. Then they saw the dogs doing that, and they're like, we don't want to eat that, So I said, no, you can eat something else that we don't have to eat that truffle. But they didn't realize that the dogs actually, actually touch it. Of course, we wash the truffle and everything, but they were very thinking about the fact that the dogs put their nose to the truffle. But yeah, these are...
My dog sleeps with her nose right next to my head. So, dream chef that you haven't yet worked with and you want to? Or you're creating another protege who's training under you?
No, I have a young girl here. She's not a chef, but she's a spunky young thing, and she's doing great work. And she runs this little 28 koti here, and she's just done something in Udaipur. And I'd love to say that I mentor her, which would be great. But no, honestly, there's no one out there that I say. There are a lot of young chefs. I mean, Thomas is one who's great. I love his humility. Unfortunately, a lot of chefs, I think ITC has Manish Basin. She's lovely. It's had other 1 or 2. In fact, they pioneered in that there are 2 or 3 women at least. Other chains don't have so many women chefs. I think Taj had somebody many years ago, but oddly enough, they don't. I find a lot of young chefs, when they get, into that space, then the humility goes. And that's a real pity. Then they become TV chefs and, all of that kind of thing. So that is there are a lot of other people I'd like to work with, not necessarily chefs, but there are people in the food space, a lot of them women, who are doing great work, not just as cooks, but, Prue Leith in the UK, who's done lots of things. I think Nigella's had a good break, and she was at the right time at the right place, and she does some interesting things. There have been lots of actually women in the UK in the early days who did great, Madhur, who did great work, I don't see, as equal as we are today, I don't see lots of women coming up. I don't see lots of me in their 30s, unfortunately. I see guys, but I don't see lots of young women. Which is a pity, I don't know why. Because it's much easier for a woman today than it was for me in my 20s and 30s.
Yes, there are a few young entrepreneurs out here who are doing work with food.
There's a young girl at Desserts today. Who's doing? She's doing something new, and she's doing some good products. But I don't see lots happening in that. There's Ranveer Brau, who's a young man who's doing TV and restaurants. And he's all over the place. When you meet these people, they don't talk about food, they talk about business.
Yeah, I know that feeling. There is obviously, I mean, just the other day I was sitting with my daughter and I was in Bombay and she was telling me, I don't understand. She's allergic to pineapple. I don't understand why.
It's the third person who said that to me in 2 days. Allergic to pineapple. Is it something to do with you get a cough?
No. Her mouth swells up and in fact starts bleeding.
Oh.
So, and she loves pizzas and she said, I still don't get who would create something called a Hawaiian pizza. Why would you put pineapple on a pizza? Is there some kind of pairing that kind of doesn't work for you or some kind of pairing that works for you?
Listen, we changed things. Russian salad, okay? How many of us have had Russian salad in clubs here? Right. And does it have pineapple in it? Yes. You know there's no pineapple in Russia, right? So this is something created. You know, if you like it, eat it. But there is no mayonnaise in Russia. They put cream and sour cream. So it's a name. It's not what Russians eat. So similarly, you know, and the pineapple with the peas and carrot, yuck, but some of us love it. It's okay. You know, my mother-in-law used to love it, and I used to say, oh. And the other thing she used to love is like a chicken satay with pineapple. It's, you know, I think the Indian diet is so rounded. I don't know about here, but in like a Gujarati thali, you always have the shrikand or you have the amras on your always together.
Yeah.
So I think this is like Chinese, you know, who have the 5 senses and now the 6th, umami. There's always a little bit of sweet in Chinese, right? They put a bit of sugar into the sauces, or even if something is from Sichuan or Hunan, which is spicy, there's always some little bit of sugar. And I think because we don't do that with our food, we have to have something mita with our food. So I think, you know, if we want it in European food, so be it. I don't eat it, okay, but I think if other people do, it's all right. It's okay. I was very much, I was very different 20 years ago. I think I've mellowed with time. If somebody likes it, go ahead. But the only thing that really, irritates me is when people put Amul cheese on a bake and it doesn't melt. That irritates me. I don't know why, but the Amul cheese that doesn't melt irritates me. There's lots of other cheese you can put now.
Yeah, and it's painful to see.
But it's a bit of, maybe it's retro now.
If somebody else is cooking it in your kitchen and you see that happening, you're just mentally cringing inside yourself and keeping quiet about it. I do that.
Well, they don't do it in my kitchen. They're too frightening. But
Well, I should learn a couple of things from you, I think. Please note. I'm going to open this out to our audiences. I think I've kind of yacked enough. And we're ready for questions. And I'm sure there are enough foodies here to shoot a few salvos at you. Do we have any questions? Is everyone so hungry?
Hi, Karen. I'm Isha. Foodie myself, like to innovate, experiment. What I want to know, in this present generation, where writing, people are not reading recipe books anymore. I see the younger generation either on the YouTube or Instagramming about food. Not even on YouTube now, a quick video on Instagram.
Yeah.
So that is what is trendy, contemporary right now. So what do you see the future of food writing as?
It's funny because I was talking to somebody earlier about doing a book and about various, I don't know if books are valid anymore. I love them.
Yeah, I have a huge library and I am cutting it down and giving it to my friends. I'm giving my heart out to everyone.
No, but I don't know. I think a lot of people buy cookery books, but they buy them because they're beautiful. I don't think they buy them to actually look at a recipe.
Yeah, see, I wanted to give it to my children. They said, no, we don't want it.
They don't want it.
Yeah,
it's like cutlery. It's like your silver thalis.
Yeah.
I have a beautiful silver canteen from my family. Yeah. And it's stunning. And I said to both my sons, now that they have partners, I said, would you like? And they both said no. Because, well, one said maybe later, but they'll have to look after it. Somebody will have to polish it. Yes. You know, they don't have full-time help. So,
rightly so. I am also doing that to
So it's the
myself.
same thing, you know. I think we're going to be the end of the generation,
It's true.
unfortunately. But you know, it's a very interesting question. How do people get recipes? I think we have to get back to spending time on things. I think the new generation is instant.
Yeah.
They want
But
quick things on their phone.
But on the other side, I see the positive aspect. As you were saying, the regional cuisine.
Yeah, that's coming up.
Some women like a village woman or even an urban woman who did not have access otherwise. I see these women on YouTube and giving their local recipes. And some of them are really good and authentic.
But some of them are terrible.
Some of them are
That's
terrible.
the problem,
So-
you know, with YouTube. You don't know what
Yeah.
works and what doesn't.
So you have to be a foodie, or you have to understand and sift. And I feel that is for any kind of information in today's world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not
And
only for cooking.
I think it's more confusing
Yeah.
because in our generation we bought a cookery book that we thought made sense.
True.
And, you know, 3 out of 5 recipes worked, right?
Yeah.
Today there are so many people writing rubbish on the net that you go halfway through a recipe and you think, that doesn't sound right. You know, I don't think people realize that it's actually not just an art, but it's technically. I did a cookery book called Chef's Table for the Hyatt, which we took almost 2 years to do. Each recipe had to be tried and tested 3 times. You know, I don't think people spend that time now on
everyone
trying and
has
testing.
access. I can make my own recipe and just put it there.
Yeah, and not even write it very well. Half the time I used to get recipes from chefs on the back of napkins, you know. This is my recipe. So a chef may be able to do a dish, but not actually write it down. Yeah.
But Isha, don't give your books away. They are a treasure. Because they're hard to find. Some good ones are really hard to find. Any more questions?
Hi, Karen.
Hello.
It was a lovely talk. I have one question. You know how our generation now is so inclined towards healthy food, whereas maybe our grandparents would always tell us that it's the deep fried food which is always interesting and you're missing out. What do you endorse? What do you think is more for the tomorrow's generation with where they're heading and the kind of cuisines they want to try and cook at home?
I don't think everybody's into healthy food. I think people talk a lot. I think they say they're into healthy food, and they do eat fried. So I don't agree with that completely. Personally, I think nothing's wrong with fried food, as long as it's not. I personally don't endorse fast food because I know what goes behind it. And I know what goes behind McDonald's and everything, and it's really not the kind of food you want to eat. So this is fast food that is delivered at a certain price, and it doesn't lie. It says, I'm giving you fries for whatever, but that potato's been extruded, it's gone through machines, now and then even I stop at the motorway and have a fry, you know. I'm talking about maybe once every 4 months or something when I'm starving. But to have fast food, especially non-veg, from any of these big American brands is really outrageous, and that I would definitely say no to, and I don't believe in it. But having the odd, I mean, you know, I just saw the pakoras out there and I was so tempted. Having a pakora now and then, or having, we do a kind of bengan fry thing in our house. I don't think there's any sin in having a bit of fried food now and then. Or, you know, the Sindhis have that fantastic tukalu, which they double fry. I think Indian food of this nature, now and then, nothing wrong with it. But I think what I do, I am very against is this American fast food that's coming in.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Hi, Karen.
Hi.
So I'd like to ask that, what is your view about the fusion?
You obviously don't eat food from your restaurant, as I can see.
So what's all about the fusion food in your view, you know? I mean, if the two cuisines they enhance each other, it can turn out to be very tasty, but, you know, when they don't, it turns out to be just a gimmick, you know, to me. So what's your take about the fusion
there's
food?
fusion, which I think is a very bad word, and there is borrowing. So I think, for example, we were talking about Bombay Canteen earlier, that does a taco, which is like a thepla, and then they put in something. That to me is borrowing. It's not fusing two things. But yes, I think you're probably talking about Indo-Chinese, what do they call it? Indo-Chinese or Sinjabi or whatever they, Chinjabi, which is, Chinese and Punjabi, and everything in lots of sauce. Listen, if you want to eat it, as I said, go ahead and eat it. I personally feel it's a little bit of a corruption of both. But I understand that in India, for example, it's not that it's pure elsewhere. Chinese food in England tastes like English food. It doesn't taste like Cantonese food. So everything is tempered to where it's served, right? So in England, they love all this lemon chicken and, these sweetie, glutinous things because they like Chinese food that has absolutely no flavor. In India, people like gravies. They don't like dry food. So that's why this whole lots of sauce in Chinese food. Similarly with Italian food. I was invited the other day, hope no one's here who was there, to a lunch in Calcutta where somebody was bragging about truffles and they served a bake with so much white sauce. I couldn't see the pasta, there was so much white sauce. And then I gifted them some truffle, because he said he loved truffle. And then he put my precious truffle on top of this already completely doused white sauce bake. Nothing wrong with it, but I just thought it was a bit of waste of the truffle. So to answer your question, I think it's a personal thing. If you've been eating, white sauce bakes for the whole of your life and you like it, go ahead. But as far as cuisine is concerned, of course, it's a corruption.
Thank you.
I hope that answers something.
Yes. Thank you.
Wow, Karen, thank you so much. With your wit, insight, and humor, that was truly a tantalizing session, and I'm sure all of us are hungry for a lot more. So thank you so much, Karen, for bringing so much anand into our evening today.
Thank you.
And tossing and turning our minds like the ingredients in your
And
food.
next time I'm here, we're going to explore Rajasthani food.
Done, definitely. Thank you, Mita Auntie, for letting us tap into your literary and culinary expertise to serve up this delectable buffet of ideas and inspiration today. I would now like to call upon Ms. Apra Kuchal, Honorary Convener of Prabha Khaitan Foundation, Rajasthan Affairs, to present a small memento of our appreciation to Ms. Karen Anand and Ms. Mita Kapur.
Oh, thank you. That's beautiful.
Platform
We thank Prabha Khaitan Foundation and Mr. Sandeep Bhutoria for always being front runners in promotion of art and culture all over the world, and especially our Jaipur. In addition, a hearty thank you to ITC Rajputana for housing these beautiful evenings, and Shri Cement, the presenters of today's event. Our friends from the media, thank you for joining us. And most importantly, thanks to all of you for being such a wonderful audience. And until our next Mulakat, Alvida.